I made 264% in under 24 months investing in AVZ. Then I tried the same strategy again, and I made 217% in less than 12 months investing in GLN. Now I'm trying again with the same strategy on a different stock.
Do you want to know the strategy?
Do you want to know why I believe it's working right now? And how you can use it to apply it to the same set of stocks, or different stocks, or even ETFs? Or do you just want a simple ETF that will cover the area that I'm investing in? Well, today, I'm going to tell you. But the cheapest, easiest strategy for investing is to like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Now, time is money. I don't plan on wasting yours, so let's get into it. With inflation rising that I spoke about in a previous video, and the EV revolution that I spoke about in the last video, I knew there were going to be opportunities in the EV space, despite the market being overpriced. I've said before that overpriced can really mean anything. Most of the time when people are talking about the market being overpriced, they're talking about the general market, like the S&P 500. But there are always markets within markets, and that's where the opportunities lie, if you're bothered to find them.
How can I find them, Jordan?
The basic shell or outline of the strategy is this. First, apply the economic lens of stock picking to find out which markets within markets you should pick. Second, use the fundamentals lens to figure out the valuations and fundamentals of stocks or companies in that market. Third, create a checklist of different data points that are crucial in those markets. And fourth, make sure you're picking a stock at the right point in time on its timeline.
What's a stock timeline, Jordan?
Don't worry, I'll get to that a little bit later. And if words like economic or fundamental lens seems like foreign language to you, then check out our previous video that I've done, which goes into the different ways you can pick stocks, which talk about the economic and fundamental analysis.
Okay, Jordan, that sounds great, but can you give us a step-by-step?
First, I use the economic lens. In my previous video, I spoke about the EV revolution. I was fortunate that I could use my economic lens to find out this was already coming.
How'd you do that, Jordan?
By staying up to date with the latest news, essentially looking into what are companies investing in, what political pressures are there in the world right now, and what are governments doing to try and solve them. In my previous video, I spoke about the EV revolution as an emerging market, so don't feel like you've missed out on the opportunities just yet. But that was just half the economic lens, about how things are affecting companies and where the world's moving. The second was looking about how the world is impacting us as investors right now, and more specifically the financial impacts that we are experiencing. And this comes to the dirty I word, inflation.
Why does that matter?
Well, now I knew I had to pick stocks that were going to do well in the EV revolution, but they had to do well in inflationary periods. This brought me to lithium miners. At this point in the process, you could simply just pick an ETF that goes into lithium miners. I'll give you a few of those at the end of the video. But I personally like to put in a little bit more effort to get a better reward. So I got my pickaxe out and started mining deeper by applying the fundamental lens on top of the economic lens. This means I had to assess companies on their fundamentals and value them. Now, you might be saying,
Warren Buffett always says, only invest in your circle of influence. Did you even know that much about this market?
and to that I absolutely agree. Only invest in what you know. But I also say, if you don't know something, go and learn about it. Basically, every market within a market has different indicators to know whether it's a good stock or not. For mining, I knew I had to learn a new set of indicators. This is similar to the way I analysed the different REITs in a previous video, link up top. At this point, I have to admit that I did reach out to a friend who worked in the mining industry. They were able to help me figure out what was needed from a stock and understanding how mining companies work. I highly recommend always building a community of people who invest in stocks. Stock picking, like anything else, is all about building and maintaining connections that you can bounce ideas off and understand where things are going in the market and figuring out better ideas. That's why I'm always keen to hear about your ideas in the comments down below. And also, if you want to hear more of my ideas, to like and subscribe to this channel. I'll keep this video at a high level just in case you don't care that much specifically about picking lithium mining stocks. Keeping this at a high level will help you use it for lithium miners, other miners, or really any stock within any other market. But with lithium mining, I found that there was a few different data points for my checklist. These included lithium grade purity, lithium price, politics of where the mine is. Basically, you want countries where their politics are stable and predictable. How much ownership of a mine the company has. The production rate to understand how much it's going to cost to produce the lithium. 6, the classic, management. And 7, the cash in the bank to actually enable the company to drill. As I mentioned before, a lot of stocks have their own timeline. Does that sound weird? Well, actually it's a lot more common and useful than you think. Each market within a market has its own timeline, and for mineral producers, it looks a little something like this. And essentially, the further along the timeline, the less risk and less reward there is. As a general rule, the more confident you feel about your circle of influence, the more risk you can take on, and the earlier in the timeline you can invest. So basically, decide how much risk you want to take on and how confident you are, and then choose where in the timeline you want to invest. Okay, so I consider the stock timeline as part of that data point or checklist. So now I've got all my data points.
Hang on a minute, Jordan. You didn't actually explain how you got those data points.
This is where it can get either a little bit boring or kind of fun. You have to do a lot of research. So looking at different financial articles and looking at stock forums and reaching out to friends like mine in the mining industry. I'm not saying this is easy. It does take a bit of work, but it's a great broad principle strategy to help you increase your circle of influence and then use it to pick successful stocks, hopefully. Once you've found a company that you like that ticks all the boxes, then you need to compare the data with similar companies. This will help you figure out what the valuations are and if it's undervalued. If it is, you can pull the trigger. And so, I did. And then 24 months later, I made 264% of my money on AVZ. And the best part about this is that once you've done all that research and figured out all you need to know about the market within the market, well then you can apply that same checklist or data points on similar companies in that market. This is exactly what I did when I made 217% within 12 months on GLN. These are both lithium companies, so they had the exact same checklist or data points, and I was already comfortable with that stock timeline. Now, I'm not suggesting that you buy any of the companies that I'm talking about today. Firstly, because I'm not a financial advisor. But secondly, you should always do your own research and figure out whether these investments will suit your personal circumstances. Like I said, I got my confidence level and my circle of influence to a point where I could invest kind of early in the timeline. That's because of my personal circumstances. So figure out what's best for you and then act on that. However, I do believe these broad principles will help you invest into anything, whether it's stocks or ETFs. So where to from here? Well, I already plan on using the same strategy to look into two different companies, WR1 and RNU. More on those later. For now, I think I should give you a bit of a break from all this stock picking talk and give you some easy ETFs that are investing in this space. These are ETFs to consider for lithium mining in EV production. The first, Global X Lithium and Battery Technology. Ticker code LIT. It has $6 billion in assets and is quite popular. The portfolio holds about 40 different companies. That's 40. And roughly 16% of its assets are in its top 2 companies. These are Albemarle, ticker code ALB, and Tesla, ticker code TSLA. Another ETF, Amplify Lithium and Battery Technology, ticker code BATT. This has $250 million in assets and focuses more on the battery technology with a bit of mining. Tesla's second place in its top holdings, but a third of it is in the metals and minings category, and this is why I've picked it. It's showing its focus on lithium miners rather than car producers. In the ETF world, it's hard to get a pure lithium mining play. That's why I prefer to stock pick. For you Australians out there, something to never put you back in black is the ETF ACDC. ETFS's Battery Tech and Lithium ETF. This offers exposure to the battery storage and production megatrend, including companies all across the supply chain for battery technology and of course lithium mining. So those are the ETFs that I promised.
Thanks for those ETFs, Jordan, but I actually want some individual stock picks.
As I said before, I like WR1 and RNU. I of course still hold GLN and AVZ, and I think they are still really good picks, except for the fact that they're probably a bit overvalued now. Without going into too much detail, Winston Resources Limited, WR1, is a lithium-focused exploration and production company with 3 project areas, all in Canada. All 3 projects are 100% owned by the company, and in Canada with a very stable and predictable government. This is where I've been able to apply my previous research and checklist to make a good stock pick. But again, I'm not saying definitely buy this, it's just something that you could consider. Now RNU is a little bit different. RNU's principal activity is actually developing a graphite project. This is all in South Australia and is also looking at copper and gold. Because I'm mining other materials other than lithium, I'll need to do a bit more research and figure out, is there a different checklist for this? Is the timeline completely the same? Basically, I need to expand my circle of influence and knowledge. You should never be too confident on a stock pick in how much you know. A healthy level of skepticism and humbleness will get you really far in the stock picking world. Again, I'm not suggesting you buy these, I just personally think that they tick my boxes and work well for my personal circumstances. These are some Australian stocks because I think there are really good opportunities in the Australian market. For the US, I need to do a bit more research, but I can see that there's some larger companies that I could suggest to consider. These include Lithium Americas, ticker code LAC, Albemarle Corporation, ALB, which has been mentioned in this video and my previous EV video, And 3, Livent Corporation. Ticker code LTHM. If you want more information on these, just leave me a comment down below. Now, before you rush off, there are a few risks. Not to be a party pooper, but you know I like to keep my videos quite balanced. There is undeniably a different risk profile when you're looking at lithium producers or any miner. This is because they're subject to commodity prices more than the general EV demand. And there's also a risk that something could have gone wrong in the exploration of their projects or in their mining. I've seen some miners tank because they think they've hit a really deep resource of high purity, when in actual fact it was a really shallow resource. Sometimes of high purity, but in worst cases it was a shallow resource of low purity. And of course there's a risk in where you invest on that stock timeline, so make sure you always know whereabouts the stock you're thinking about is actually placed on that timeline. I'll leave a link to that image I put up before in the description down below. To ensure you continue investing gold, make sure you like and subscribe to this YouTube channel. I've kept today's video at a pretty high level so that everyone can get something from it. But if you want me to go into any more detail on any of the specific stocks that I've mentioned, or more specifics on mining stocks, just leave me a comment down below. As a disclaimer, I still own AVZ and GLN, and I've taken a small parcel in WR1. I know I've said this so many times in this video, but again, I'm not saying you should definitely buy these stocks. They just fit my personal circumstances and my risk tolerance. But the next step for you, consider investing in these stocks. Research more into lithium miners and figure out the different checklists for any stocks or ETFs that you want to invest in. For me, I'm going to continue looking for opportunities in the EV space, but I've sort of bought enough now that I might ease off and look for other opportunities in different markets. But I'll let you know on how I'm going with the RNU. Fingers crossed it's not too difficult to figure out. Oh, and for you of course, check out another video. Here, or here, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks for those ETFs, Jordan, but actually, thanks for those ETFs, Jordans, but Jordans. Check.